Sound test, 1, 2, 1. Couldn't even get one. Hey, what's up everyone, Danny here. I'm gonna be completely honest with you right out of the gate. This PC right here is something that you likely won't be able to put together with the current state of the PC hardware market. So then, you might be asking, why am I showing it to you then? Well, I'm showing it to you because that last statement that I just said is only partially true. While it would be very difficult to piece this entire build together, you can build most of it because 7 out of the 8 major components used in it are readily available and reasonably priced. Right now it's really hard to find a current gen and even last gen graphics card. So the advice that I've been giving to people is to find a card that can hold you over, something that you can pick up used at a reasonable price, and then plan to later turn around and sell when you do eventually come across the actual graphics card that you want. I think this is a much better plan than to continue waiting, because I know a lot of you out there have already been waiting a long time. Like, some people have told me that they've been saving up for well over a year by this point. Being told to keep waiting an unknown amount of time when you've already waited a long time is just not feasible in my opinion. Graphics cards aside, hardware prices are looking pretty good right now, so it's really up to you what you want to do. But for this video, I'm going to show you this build right here and hopefully give you some ideas. There are some pretty cool parts in here that I was excited to use for the first time that are not the graphics card. So let's check it out. This build was made possible by Micro Center, which right now I would consider hands down the best place to pick up computer parts. And yes, that is including graphics cards, because they are selling them first come first serve in-person pickup, meaning that the online bots and scalpers don't have as big of an advantage compared to real gamers out there who just want to buy a single card for their own personal use. If you're ready to begin piecing together your build, then there's no better place to start than with Micro Center. Let's start with the CPU, which is the Intel Core i5-10400F. As of making this video, this is one of the best value processors, coming in at only $130. It's also in stock more often than compared to its AMD counterparts. This 6-core 12-thread CPU is a great choice for gamers in particular because it's able to hold its own when paired with graphics cards double to triple its price. Graphics cards do a lot of the heavy lifting for gaming, so being able to save on the CPU and allocate more money for the GPU, especially in times like this, makes this an awesome chip. Intel 11th gen processors are right around the corner. They weren't out as of me making this build, but even after their release, I think the 10 series chips are still going to remain really relevant because of the low cost, and even more so if they get further price reductions for becoming last gen products. For this build, I didn't use a stock cooler. I really wanted to use a cooler that's always popping up as one of the top results whenever I look for coolers on Amazon, and it's the Ars Game River 5. This is a really sleek looking black cooler that comes with an RGB fan, and it's priced at only $30. One of the most popular coolers around this price is the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo, which has been praised over the years for being one of the best bang for buck options, but the River 5 has one more heat pipe, 5 in total compared to the 4 on the Hyper 212. I actually ran the Hyper 212 in this system as well, so I can get a comparison between the two coolers. And what I did was I ran both of them with Cinebench R23, the stability test, until they stabilized in temperatures, and what I found was that the River 5 came in roughly 2 degrees cooler than the Hyper 212. So at $30, I think it's a no-brainer to pick this up if you're looking for something that looks and performs great and comes in at a low cost. For the motherboard, I went with the ASRock H470M Pro 4. I went with this even though there are cheaper B460 and H410 boards out there, because those lower end boards usually have no cooling on the power delivery components, making them pretty poor candidates for future upgrades to i7 and i9 CPUs. Those lower end chipsets also aren't BIOS upgradable to make them compatible with the upcoming 11th gen products, whereas the H470 chipsets are. If you're working with a lower budget for your build, like around $600 or $700, then by all means go with the H410 or B460 board, but with the total we're coming in at, picking up a slightly nicer board is reasonable. The graphics card in this build is the RTX 3060 Ti Eagle OC from Gigabyte. This is the lowest end model that they offer, with an original MSRP of $420, which is super close to the $400 intended launch price of the Founders Edition model. With the tariffs and the ongoing shortages, the prices for these have increased to $480, which isn't totally unreasonable, but the issue isn't the increase in price as much as it is the almost non-existent stock. People are willing to pay the price, they just can't get them. Being a lower end card, it does have a completely plastic shroud and backplate, and the heatsink isn't as large as the more expensive models. For memory, I used a 16GB set from a brand called Neo Forza, which prior to this I've never heard of, but I figured why not. I've never been too picky when it comes to RAM, and there seems to be new brands coming out all the time. This one happened to be the cheapest one with RGB when I was looking, so I chose it to match the other RGB components in the build. Branding doesn't matter too much since all RAM comes from the 3 major memory suppliers anyway, those being Hynix, Micron, and Samsung. This kit in particular is Hynix based. The 10400F only supports speeds up to 2666, so it's going to be leaving some speed on the table. For storage, we're going with an Inland Platinum 1TB NVMe SSD. The Platinum series comes in a bit low overpriced compared to the Inland Premium drives that I've used a lot in the past, and the main difference is the read and write speeds. These drives actually have a faster sequential read speed at 3400 megabytes per second compared to the 3100 on the Premium, but the trade-off is a slower write speed of 1900 megabytes per second compared to 2800. It is a QLC drive compared to the Premium, which is TLC, so there's a lower endurance rating of 100 terabytes written, but I think very few people will fully utilize that within the life of the drive anyways. By that time, a lot of people are probably going to be upgrading to the newer tech that's both faster and larger capacity, but I thought that was just a good thing to note for people wondering the difference between Platinum and Premium inland drives. For the power supply, I went with the EVGA 650BQ. This is an 80 plus bronze rated semi-modular unit that has plain black cables, and it's going to be plenty capable of powering the build while having some overhead for future upgrades. For reference, in this system with the 10400F and the overclocked 3060 Ti, on top of the rest of the components, I ran Furmark and Prime 95 at the same time, which heavily loads both the CPU and GPU. This represents kind of a worst case scenario. You're not going to be using this much power when you're gaming, streaming, video editing, or doing pretty much anything else. It's very conservative, and doing that, I pulled around 370 watts from the wall. Assuming 80% efficiency, it means that the system requires around 300 watts under the heaviest of loads. And last but not least, we have the case, which is the Cooler Master MB311L. This is the case I've been wanting to build in for a while because it comes in at a pretty low cost of $65 while being a great looking case with a tempered glass side panel. It has 2 included addressable RGB fans and a fully meshed front panel that promotes plenty of airflow. There are some shortcomings with this case though, because while it does look great and perform very well, Cooler Master achieved the low price by cutting some corners. And this is seen in the breakaway expansion slot covers, cheap and flimsy power supply dust filter, lack of an exhaust fan, and the design of 4 thumb screws going to the glass panel as opposed to a holeless glass design by the use of a metal lip, which is something that a lot of the higher end and nicer cases tend to implement. Overall though, I think this is a perfect case for a first time builder and anyone who's looking to get a lot of bang for buck when it comes to aesthetics. I did end up adding an extra exhaust fan in the back though because I didn't like the look of it being empty back there. But looks aside, it did lower the CPU and GPU temps by 1 to 2 degrees. Alright, so let's take a look at the build list and price summary. Ideally, this build should come in just a bit over $1,000 before tax. If you've got a Micro Center nearby, then you can get that nice $20 CPU and motherboard bundle discount that they offer. And the first thing when you look at this list you'll probably notice is that a lot of the budget was allocated towards the graphics card. In an ideal world, $480 will get you a really good graphics card. It should have almost gotten you a RTX 3070 Founders Edition at MSRP, but with availability and pricing all over the place, that's not the case anymore. However, you can still pair plenty of other graphics cards from previous generations with this build as a temporary solution to hold you over. A GTX 1070 would be a good fit, as would a 1660 Super or an RTX 2060, and I could even see pairing something as low as an RX 580 with it. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I don't think it's a good idea to keep waiting to put your build together just because you can't find one part, the graphics card. What's going to end up happening is that you might be waiting a really long time, and who knows how long, but then other parts might become scarce down the line. And we've seen it happen before with RAM, SSDs, power supplies, and it could happen again. But that's just my 2 cents. It's your money. You're the one who has to ultimately make the decision whether or not you want to keep waiting or start building. So I'll leave that up to you. But getting back to the build, I do have a silent build sequence I'll release in a separate video. But for now, let's take a look at some B-roll shots of the complete build and then jump into the performance. Alright, so now for the benchmarks. I'm running the CPU at stock speeds, of course, because it's a non-K chip on a non-Z motherboard. The RAM is running at the max supported speeds of 2666 MHz, and the graphics card is running a 100 MHz overclock on the core and 1000 MHz on the memory. I tested various workload applications as well as games, with the games being tested at both 1080p and 1440p. I also tested streaming performance on both a lighter title as well as a heavier title using both CPU and GPU encoding, ensuring kind of the performance hit when you do those. So whoever's interested in the streaming side of things, there will be that. But yeah, sit back, relax, and enjoy the benchmarks. So those were the benchmarks, and I think this build is pretty awesome for the price that it should be coming in at. It's just not awesome that the parts aren't readily available so that people can build something similar. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. I don't really have that many closing thoughts as I normally do. It's just that the state of the hardware market has me pretty depressed overall, to the point where I feel like I constantly have to apologize to you all for something that's totally out of my control. And it definitely makes content creation a lot less fun. So I want to give a huge thanks to all the viewers out there who do continue to watch my content, even though, you know, you might not be able to build and replicate everything that I show. But if you are one of the lucky few out there who have been able to buy one of the rare parts, let the rest of us know down in the comments below what that was. You know, tell us your story, what you got and how you got it, and give us all some shred of hope that not all the graphics cards are going to bots and scalpers. And for everyone else who haven't been as lucky, let me know what's going on with you. You know, whether or not you already have a PC you're looking to upgrade, or if you're looking to build your very first one, and which parts are at the top of your wish list. I'm really curious to find out what everyone's situation is. But yeah, other than that, I hope y'all have a good one, and I look forward to seeing you down in the comments, as well as in the next video. Bye.